What is going on, guys? In today's video I will show you the top 5 best new builds in part of Exile's 2 new update, the Dawn of the Hunt. So in this guide I will give you a quick overview of each setup, then I will explain what skill gems and upgrades should you focus on, then as well we'll see what is the best gear and how to get it, and then finally we will go over the passive skill tree, stats, your skill rotations, and even what charm should you use, so we would be able to get the highest damage possible and much more. This setup's main focus is to run and press from 1 to 2 skills and then target big enemy groups to then weaken them and explode. One of the most powerful skills that we have in our arsenal is the Shockwave totem, and as you can see from the gameplay, we are just running into the enemies and one-shotting them without even trying. Also, our ancestral warrior totem and the scavenge plating makes the most out of this by effectively extending the damage of this hit many times over, in order to kill big targets like the bosses or tanky rare monsters. Of course, like most melee builds, the armor explosion was nerfed, but our particular setup wasn't impacted as much as other melee builds, so currently this is by far one of the best warrior builds in the game. If you are looking for a powerful auto AoV machine to target enemies and delete them in split seconds, then this is the one for you. So let me show you the build, and for the main class I have chosen to go with the warrior, and our ascendancy is the warbringer. Then for the first skill we have the mage strike with the support gem called the rage, armor explosion, magnified effect, and the primal armament. And even after the new changes on how the armor breaker works, the mage strike still works perfectly fine, as long as you use it with the cultist great hammer. Then second we got the Shockwave totem with inspiration, close combat, and overpower. Then next we got the scavenge plating with the precision, vitality, and clarity. Next we have the ancestral warrior totem with the sunder, super critical, and overabundance. Next up we have the time of the need with fast forward, herbalism, and clarity. And finally for the last one we are using the hammer of the gods with fist of war, concentrated effect, exploit weakness, and heft. Most of this setup is structured around using the Shockwave totem and the mage strike to delete enemies in split seconds, so we use gems and skills that will support and increase their size and damage, while the rest are powerful buffs and utility skills that usually get activated in the background. And as our build is already super broken, so we don't have to use more than these 6 active skill gems. Next up we have our passive tree, and if you're interested in a full in-depth guide on how it works, then check out my beginner guide. So let's take a look at our setup, and we want to start at this melee damage node, and then go like this until we get all of these 4. So brutal, smash, sturdy metal, and relentless. Then next up we want to go to this top right side like this, and then go to the left until we get this whole thing, so ancestral reach and the supportive ancestors. Next we circle back a little, and this time keep going until we reach the devastation node. Then next up we keep going and take the right side, and then keep going more until we get both of these, so carving earth and hardened wood. Then now keep moving forwards until the end, and from here we want to get both of these totem nodes. Which side you choose first doesn't really matter as long as you get both of them. And then finally from this point and onwards you can unlock the rest of the nodes in whatever order you prefer. All of these nodes that we got are very useful, but the ones I mentioned have the top priority as they're the most important ones to acquire early on in the game, to make our build functional, and then in the late game to make it even more powerful. Also, as far as attributes go, you just simply want to fulfill your attribute requirements to gear and skill gems, and then spend the rest of your leftover attributes into more strength. And then now let's go all the way to the middle again, and for our ascendancy build this is what we have. So at the beginning you want to unlock the anvil's weight, then second get the imploding impacts, then third we want the answered call, and then finally for the fourth option go with the wooden wall. Next up we have our atlas passives, and the general idea behind this is to aim for bonus stats that spawn a lot of grouped up monsters, such as in expeditions or in rituals. Our warrior build is also great at single target DPS, so we can also spend a bit points into farming boss maps or essences. So when we start we want to first of all get to this bottom right side like this. Then from here we want to go until we get all the way to this keystone called the Deadly Evolution. Then next we go back to the middle, and this time take the bottom left side and get all of these passives. And then when all of these are done, then now we go again to the middle and now take the middle path and unlock the rest of the nodes in whatever order you prefer. Next we have our gear. The weapon of our choice is the cultist great hammer, which is special because its base stat does that our strike now deals splash damage to the targets within 1.8 meter range. And as I said, after the new changes, So how the armor breaker works, the mace strike will now still work perfectly fine, but you specifically have to use this weapon, or otherwise switch the mace strike skill for something different like the stampede. And then for bonus stats, we want increased physical damage, more armor, and more levels of all melee skills. Then for the helmet we have the warrior great helm with armor. And for more we want max life, more accuracy, more intelligence, and fire resistance. Then for chest we have the advanced full plate with armor. And for more we need max life, armor, and cold resistance. Then for the belt we have the rawhide belt with 20% quicker flask recovery. And for bonus stats we want max life, more armor, and +2 to charm slots. Then for gloves we got the interested gloves with energy shield. And for more we need max life, max mana, and more levels to all melee skills. Then for boots we are using the advanced bronze greaves with armor. And for more we for sure want increased movement speed, and then also max life and resistances like cold and fire. Then for our first ring we got the ruby ring with fire resistance. And for more we'd want add physical damage, more intelligence, and lightning resistance. While on the second one we have the topaz ring with lightning resistance. And for more we need max life, max mana, more strength, and chaos resistance. And then finally for the amulet we got the crimson amulet with life regen per second. And for more we want max life, more armor, more dexterity, and fire resistance. No matter which gear you choose, just at least try to get 75% resistance cap on all 4 elements. This is a starter setup, which should be more of an example of what stats and prefixes to look for. Then next we have runes. And now finally, let's quickly take a look at how this build will work. And to be honest, because of our setup, this build will be extremely powerful, no matter in what order you use your skills. But if you're interested in the most optimized damage rotation, then here it is. So for both clearing and bossing, you want to place down your Shockwave totem, an Ancestral Warrior which is linked with the Sunder totem. And then you can also use the Mace Strike to get a bit of extra damage in, and then later to generate Rage as well. And finally, when you are at high tier maps and at the full endgame, you'll also be wanting to use the Hammer of the Gods on stunned bosses. But since it relies on having more than just plus levels to all melee skills on your weapon, so it might not deal as much damage for you as it does for other builds. And that's why our main objective will be to focusing on crazy AoE damage and less at single targets. So this is an endgame build that is structured around using Explosive Shot, which will proc bunch of buffs like Herald of Thunder, Herald of Ice, and Herald of the Ash, which will all create massive explosions and give you the ability to clear entire screens of enemies in just a second or two. But as we will lack in single target damage, so for that reason we are going to be also using the Shock Burst rounds that will delete bosses insanely quickly. However, because of this we will now have to use the Tree Jagged Mask, which will now make our explosive shots contribute to the shock instead of ignite, and this will completely solve our low single target damage and make our build not only insane for AoE but also against tough bosses. So let me show you the build, and for the main class I'm going with the Mercenary and our ascendancy is the Witchhunter. Then for the first skill we have the explosive shot with the support gem like the scatter shot, conduction, martial tempo, fire penetration, and the lightning exposure. Then second we get the shock burst rounds with the lightning infusion, concentrated effect, heft, primal armament, and the fresh clip. Then next we get the emergency reload with premeditation, ingenuity, and persistence. Next we have the sorcery ward with the fire mastery and the lightning infusion. Next we got the Herald of Ice with magnified effect, cold infusion, cold penetration, and cold mastery. Next we got overwhelming presence with no support gems. Next we got Herald of the Thunder with innervate, lightning penetration, ice bite, and glaciation. Then for some of the last ones we have the Herald of the Ash and Voltaic Mark, and for both of them we don't want to use any gems. And finally for the last one we got the Wind Dancer with the Blind, Maim, and Unbreakable. Most of this setup is structured around using our explosive shots to delete enemies in split seconds, so we use gems and skills that will support and increase their size and damage, while the rest are powerful buffs and utility skills that usually get activated in the background. Next up we have our passive tree, and if you are interested in a full in-depth guide on how it works, then check out my beginner guide. So let's take a look at our setup, and we want to start at this projectile damage node, and then go like this while getting these 4. So Battle Harden, Feel No Pain, Remorseless, and Ricochet. Then from here we keep on moving while also taking this whole thing. Then next we now go to the right side and get these 2, so Adrenaline Rush and Instant Reload. Then afterwards we want to keep on going down while taking these 2, so Emboldened Avatar and the Forces of Nature. while also getting these two more, so Flash Storm and Lightning Rod. And then from here you want to get all of these here as well. And only from this point and onwards you can unlock the rest of the nodes in whatever order you prefer. All of these nodes that we got are very useful, but the ones I mentioned have the top priority, as they're the most important ones to acquire early on in the game, to make our build functional, and then later on the priority doesn't really matter that much. And then now let's go all the way to the middle again, and for Ascendancy build, this is what we have. So at the beginning you want to unlock Pitiless Killer. This will instantly kill enemies if their life reaches a certain threshold. Then second we get the Judge, Jury and Executioner. This will now give us a Decimating Strike, which will remove between 5 to 30% of enemies' health before your first attack. Then next we get the Obsessive Ritual. This will add the Sorcery Ward to your skill, and Elemental Damage Barrier at the cost of 50% less armor and evasion rating. This barrier will now absorb elemental damage and up to 30% of your armor and evasion rating, so this trade-off is 100% worth it. And then finally, we want to go with the Ceremonial Ablution, which will now buff the effect and recovery of our Sorcery Ward even further. So feel free to use this exact same path as we have right here. And next we have our gear. The weapon of our choice is the Expert Forlorn Crossbow. I chose this one because of one simple fact, which is that this is the highest DPS crossbow in the game. So then for bonus stats we also want to go with increased physical damage, adds physical damage to attacks, and loads an additional bolt, which is a huge buff, so try to prioritize this one for sure. Then for the helmet we have the Tree Dragon Mask, and as I mentioned at the beginning, this is the only required item for this build to work at 100%. So if you can find it, then just buy it, and believe me, it will be 100% worth it. And this mask will now make our explosive shots contribute to the shock instead of ignite, and this will completely solve our low single target damage. Then for the chest we have the Expert Serpent Scale Coat with evasion, and for more stats we got even more evasion, max life, and chaos and lightning resistance. Then for the belt we have the Utility Belt with 20% faster flask recovery. And for more we got max life, more to charm slots, as well as cold and fire resistance. Then for gloves we got the Expert Spin Bracers with evasion. And for more we want adds physical damage to attacks, max life, increased attack speed, and leech off physical attack damage as mana. Then for boots we're using the Expert Lizard Scale Boots with evasion. And for more we need increased movement speed, evasion, max life, as well as fire and cold resistance. Then for our first and second ring we got the same one called the Amethyst Ring with the chaos resistance. And for more we want adds physical damage to attacks, max life and lightning resistance. And then finally for the amulet we have the Bloodstone Amulet with max life. And for more we got more to spirit, even more to max life and fire resistance. No matter which gear you choose, just at least try to get 75% resistance cap on all 4 elements. This is the best case scenario setup, which should be more of an example of what stats and prefixes to look for. And now finally, let's quickly take a look at how this build will work, and I will give you 2 rotations. So first up we have AoV farming, and for this one we simply want to spam our explosive shots. And almost for every content, these big AoE explosions should take care of the most enemies, as we have stacked the Herald of the Thunder, Herald of the Ice and Herald of the Ash for massive buffs. And then for single targets, this time we want to start by applying our Voltaic Mark to increase our chance to shock and its effect. And then afterwards we use Explosive Shot until our target becomes shocked. Then when that happens, then now we use our Shock Burst rounds until they go on cooldown. And then afterwards use Emergency Reload for quick buffs, and then again keep on continuing spamming our Shock Burst rounds until the shock wears off, or if the enemy completely gets destroyed. This setup is known as the Bonestorm Witch build, and this skill by itself is a slow clearing ability, but with the right gems, passives and synergies, we can make it 100 times better, and this is exactly what we have right here. This build also has 2 variants, so going full crit chance, what I will personally be doing for myself, or then perhaps go with the Detonate a Dead variant. Both of these will excel at different things, so which one you choose is up to you. This variant, so the full crit chance setup, excels at huge amount of damage. We won't be focusing on anything else besides the massive crits and stacking as much life as possible, because the more life/defense we have, the more damage we can do in return. Also, at some point in the later game, some lowered gear players might run into a mana problem, but lucky for us, the Witch has many tools to address this problem. And with optimized gear, we need nothing more than a single stat roll on our weapon or the gear, to completely solve this issue. So if you are finally looking for a super fun Blood Mage build that primarily doesn't use the life leech, but instead goes full life and full crit, then this is the one for you. So let me show you the build, and for the main class I have chosen to go with the Witch, and our ascendancy is the Blood Mage. Then for the first skill we have the Bonestorm, with support gems such as the Brutality, Arcane Tempo, Inevitable Critical and the Super Critical. Then second we got the Bone Cage with the Spell Cascade, Lockdown and the Splinter. Then next we got the Life Remnant with the Vitality, Clarity and the Cannibalism. Then next we have the Combat Frenzy with the Perfusion, Pin and the Potential. And finally for the last one we got the Bone Blast with no support gems. Next up we have our passive tree, and if you are interested in a full in-depth guide on how it works, then check out my beginner guide. So let's take a look at our setup, and we want to start at the spell and minion damage increase node. Then next we want to keep on going like this until we get to our first stop, which is the potent incantation. Then now keep on going to the right side to get this critical exploit. Then now we circle back a little and keep going like this until we get the sudden escalation. Then now from this point we go down like this. Then take the right path and keep going until this point, and then keep going all the way up until the Tempered Mind. Then next we go down a bit and then take right, which will take us all the way to our first keystone, the Resonance. Then from this point we want to circle back again and simply get the last two priority nodes called the Power Within and the Last for Power. And then finally from this point and onwards you can unlock the rest of the nodes in whatever order you prefer. All of the nodes that we got are important, but the ones I mentioned have the top priority, as they're the most important ones to acquire early on in the game, to make our build functional, and then in the late game to make it even more powerful. Also, as far as attributes go, so you just simply want to fill your attribute requirements for the gear and skill gems, and then after that, spend the rest of your leftover attributes into more strength. And then now let's go all the way to the middle again, and for Ascendancy build, this is what we have. So at the beginning you want to unlock the Sangumancy, but please don't get it too early. This node is required for every Blood Mage, and this ability does ton of self damage, and it can be quite hard to mitigate this in the early game. So I recommend for you to wait until you complete your second trial, and then take your first and second Ascendancy at the same time. So then after the second trial you want to get the Grasping Wounds. This one will make you significantly tankier and synergize very well with the Sangumancy. So as I said before, get both these Ascendancies at the same time. Then next, take the Gore Spike. This will scale off your maximum life and is a big damage boost. And then finally for the fourth option you want to take the Crimson Power, as this will give you a massive energy shield body armor, and this will also scale really well with our previous Gore Spike. Next up we have our Atlas passives, and the general idea behind this is to aim for bonus passives that spawn a lot of grouped up monsters, such as in expeditions or the rituals. Our Bonestorm Blood Mage build won't be doing crazy amount of damage against single targets, so we mainly want to do very small farming in boss maps or the essences. So then when we start we want to first of all get this bottom right side like this, then from here go like this until we get all the way to the left side. And then when all of these passives are done, then now we go again to the middle, and now take the middle path and then go a bit to the left again and get all of these nodes. Then next we have our gear. The weapon of our choice is the Attuned Wand with the mana drain, and for the extra bonuses we want increased spell damage, plus 3 levels to all physical spell skills, then also increased critical hit chance, and more percentage to critical damage bonus. Next we also have the offhand called the Emblem Crest Shield, with the armor and energy shield. This specific shield is the best job that I got, but it's not required. However, for bonuses we want max life, cold and fire resistance. Remember that our main goal is to stack as much life and resistances as possible, so that's why you will see few stats repeating all over again. Then for the helmet we have the Expert Vicar Tiara with the energy shield, and for more we want max life, cold and fire resistance. Then for the chest we have the Guild Vestments with the armor and energy shield. And for bonus stats we need max life, evasion rating and the fire resistance. Then for the belt we have the Rawhide belt with the increased recovery to the flask, and for the extras we want max life, lightning and chaos resistance. Then for the gloves we got the Torn gloves with the energy shield, and for more we want max life, increased armor and evasion. Then for boots we're using the Bushwhack with the evasion. For this build, we will need to get these boots or use the pin gem on our combat frenzy. So which option you prefer, it's up to you. But if you have the pin, then the boots are not required, but still very powerful. So get it or not, but at least go with as high movement speed as possible. Then also get evasion rating and more to dexterity. Then for the first ring, get the ruby ring with fire resistance. And for more, we want max life, lightning and chaos resistance. While on the second one we got the sapphire ring with cold resistance, and for more get max life, fire or lightning resistance. And finally for the amulet, get the solar amulet with more to spirit and max life. No matter which gear you choose, at least try to get 75% resistance cap on all 4 elements. And now finally, let's quickly take a look at how this build will work. Our main rotation will be the same, no matter if you choose to go with the full crit or the detonator variant. So for weak enemies we simply want to choose a target, and then just spam the Bonestorm with the Bone Cage. And then for bosses or elites we still do the same thing, just this time also integrate the Bone Blast with the Bonestorm and the Bone Cage, and it's that easy. Most of our buffs will work in the background, which will give us the real damage, so then all you have to do is get used to the mechanics, which are mainly to use the channeling trick, then to be kiting enemies 24/7 and pick up the life remnants. And then from here just spam the Bonestorm and the Bone Cage and have fun. This setup is a very new version of one of the best builds in the game, the Lightning Arrow Deadeye. However, unlike in that build, in this one we are using the Ice Shot in the combination with the Lightning Rod and a Blink, which will give us this insane mobility and speed farming potential. What I like most about this setup is that we can simply spam one single skill and pretty much destroy tier 16 maps and reach up to 5 million DPS, because of how many buffs we have working in the background. Like you can see from the gameplay, we are basically deleting enemies in split seconds. And on top of this, we can also delete bosses, by us having also a very high boss damage from using the Lightning Rod and the Orb of Storms. At some point in the later game, some lowered gear players might run into a mana problem, but lucky for us, the Ranger has many tools to address this problem. And with the optimized gear, we need nothing more than a single stat roll on our weapon or gear to completely solve this issue. So if you don't mind using only from 1 to 2 skills and completely speed clearing through hundreds of enemies in few seconds, then let's get right into it. So let me show you the build, and for the main class I have chosen to go with the Ranger and our ascendancy is the Deadeye. Then for the first skill we have the Ice Shot with the support gems such as the Primal Armament, Martial Tempo, Cold Infusion, Ricochet and the Heft. Then second we get the Lightning Rod with a Scatter Shot, Concentrated Effect, Elemental Focus and the Close Combat. Then next we got the Orb of Storms with the Chain, Deep Freeze and the Fount of Mana. Next we have the Herald of the Thunder with the Execute and Elemental Focus. Next up we have the Herald of the Ice with the Long Shot, Cold Penetration, Magnified Effect and the Cold Mastery. Next we got Wind Dancer with the Cannibalism, Clarity and Herbalism. Next we have the Bow Shot with the Life Drain, Soul Thief, Wind Wave and the Blind. And finally for the last two we are using the Blink and the Mana Remnants with no support gems. Most of this setup is structured around using the Ice Shot and the Bow Shot to delete enemies in seconds, so we use gems and skills that will support and increase their size and damage, while the rest are powerful buffs and utility skills that usually get activated in the background. Next up we have our passive tree, and if you are interested in a full in-depth guide on how it works, then check out my beginner guide. So let's take a look at our setup, and by the way our Jewel placement is also important, so that's why we here have these type of lines. So then with that said, we want to start at this evasion node, and then go like this while also taking the cat-like agility. Then next we keep on going and take both of these, so master flashing and the freedom of movement. Then from here we want to go up here and then go to the left side, and then get all of these nodes. Then afterwards we circle back and now go until the end and take this feathered flashing. And from this point and onwards you can just unlock all the other nodes in whatever order you prefer. Also, when we take a look at this outline, you may think that we waste a lot of points just to get this Mind Over Matter keystone. However, this is a big part of our defense, as we are already doing insane amount of damage, mainly from our DPS nodes and the weapon and gear choices, so we can easily afford to do this. I did a lot of testing and it was very hard to survive tier 16 maps, So after I talked with a bunch of players and did testing, we figured out that going a bit overboard and taking the mind over matter was a huge life changer for this specific build. And then now let's go all the way to the middle again, and for Ascendancy build this is what we have. So at the beginning you want to unlock the Gathering Winds, as it increases your movement and attack speed, while also giving you a huge evasion boost. Then second we get the Point Blank, which this time will increase your damage to the close proximity targets. Then next we wanna get the Endless Munitions, as it increases both your clear speed and single target damage. The third trial is usually pretty hard, but it's definitely worth doing it as soon as you can, as this will give us a huge DPS boost. And then finally we want to get the Wind Ward, as especially when doing higher tier maps and content, you will need to get all the damage reduction that you can. Next up we have our Atlas passives. And the general idea behind this is to aim for bonus passives that spawn a lot of grouped up monsters, such as in expeditions or in rituals. So when we start we wanna first of all go to the right side and get all of these nodes, and then keep on going down until you get to this keystone called the Deadly Evolution. And then from this point and onwards you can unlock the rest of the nodes in whatever order you want. But then on top of this we have even more passives. Which order in which you unlock them doesn't really matter, so again it's up to you. And this is how it should look like for the ritual. Then next we have Delirium. Then third we have bosses, and then on top of that we have the pinnacle bosses. Then next we also have our expedition setup, and then finally our breach setup. Then in the next part we have our gear. The weapon of our choice is the Widow Veil bow with insane bonus stats, which gives us from 150 to 200% increased bonus, which is gained from equipping a quiver. To be honest, this is one of the biggest reasons of how we can get to 5 million DPS, and why you can see that crazy gameplay of one-shotting enemies. However, no matter what bow you use, this build will still function, but just not to the insane level that I can. So then for the bow stats you want to look for attack speed, critical chance bonus, lightning damage and pretty much anything else that will boost our DPS. And then for our offhand we got the primed quiver, which this time is quite important. So with this we get increased attack speed, and for bonus stats we want to go with adds cold damage to attacks, more accuracy, increased projectile speed, plus levels to all projectile skills, even more increased attack speed and more to dexterity. Then for the helmet we have the Expert Hunter hood with evasion, and for more we want even more evasion and increased evasion. Then also max mana and fire and cold resistance. Then for the chest we got the Queen of the Forest with evasion, and for its stats we get increased evasion, fire, cold and lightning resistance. Also we get increased movement speed per every 500 evasion. This is yet again the reason of why we build our evasion so high. However, again this is not required, so if you can afford this, then look for any other chest piece with similar stats. Then for the belt we have the utility belt with 20% quicker flask recovery, more evasion and max life, as well as fire and cold resistance. Then for gloves we got the Hand of the Wisdom and Action. Same thing applies, if you don't want it, then just get anything else. But if I would say to get at least one of these expensive items, then this would be the one, as because of these gloves we want to stack our intelligence or dexterity as high as possible. And then for bonus stats we want dexterity, intelligence, increased attack speed and adds lightning damage to attacks. Then for boots we're using the Expert Lizard Scale boots with evasion. And for bonus stats we get more evasion, cold and lightning resistance, as well as stun threshold. This is one of the only builds where we don't want movement speed on the boots, because our chest piece will give us movement speed from evasion, and at the same time disable any other movement speed modifier. In the endgame you will get more speed than any basic speed boots, so of course if you can then get this item, but if you can't then go with any basic chest, and then just pick the movement speed on the boots. Then for the first ring we got the Ruby ring with the fire resistance, and for more we got evasion, max mana, intelligence and increased mana regeneration rate. While for the second one we have the Prismatic ring, with percentage to all elemental resistances. And for more we got increased cold damage, max mana, intelligence and lightning and chaos resistance. And then finally for the amulet we got the Crimson Amulet with a life regen per second. And for more we want max energy shield, max life, max mana, intelligence, more to all elemental resistances and chaos resistance. No matter which gear you choose, just at least try to get 75% resistance cap on all 4 elements. This is a starter setup which should be more of an example of what stats and prefixes to look for. And now finally, let's quickly take a look at how this build will work. And as you can see from the gameplay, this is one of the easiest and simplest builds in the game. So our main rotation is just to spam the ice shot and the bow shot for easy monster kills, which are most of our targets. But then specifically for bosses, you can as well place down Orb of Storms, and then spam the ice shot and the lightning rod. This will give you a great buff and insane amount of shock lightning damage for single targets. And finally, if you're low geared and run into a mana problem, especially against bosses, then try to get one Javel with mana on kill, or mana on kill from the quiver. And as well, this might sound obvious, especially at the beginning, when you might not have yet unlocked mana on kill, but if you run out of mana, then just simply cast less skills. And wait, you will be doing very high damage anyways, so casting few less skills won't really impact the gameplay that much. But it may reduce your mana consumption, especially if you're under-geared or under-leveled. So this setup is a new combo between the Spark Sorceress and the Cast Comet and the Time Freeze. Our build will rely on high spark crits rather than drowning them in hundreds of different sparks. This way our clear speed will be as good as any other sorceress, but against bosses is the place where we are going to shine. Our crit scaling will reach crazy levels of damage. Even if you don't one-shot the boss, then you will have about 13 to 14 seconds, plus 7 seconds and even 3 more additional seconds of the time stops in your disposal. So if you are ready to destroy enemies and pretty much one-shot the bosses, then this is the one for you. So let me show you the build, and for the main class we are going with the Sorceress and our ascendancy is the Chronomancer. Then for the first skill we have Time Freeze with the Wind Wave, second Wind and Unbreakable. Then second we got the Time Snap with no support gems. Then next we got Temporal Rift with Ingenuity. Next we have Temporal Chains with the Cursed Ground, Encumbrance, Expanse, Magnified Effect and Ritualistic Curse. Then for the next one we have the Cast on Critical with the Comet, Spell Echo, Elemental Focus, Inspiration and the Concentrated Effect. Next we got Conductivity with the Heightened Curse and the Focus Curse. Next we got the Soul Offering with the Minion Mastery, Dance Maccabi and the Ablation. Next we have Frost Wall with the Icicle, Cold Mastery, Spell Cascade and the Cold Exposure. Next up we have the Archmage with the Clarity and the Lightning Mastery. And finally we are using the Spark with the Acceleration, Electrocute, Consider Casting, Arcane Surge and the Arcane Tempo. Most of this setup is structured around using our sparks for AoE and temporal chains with Time Freeze for the single target. So we use gems and skills that will support and increase their duration and damage, while the rest are powerful buffs and utility skills that usually get activated in the background. Next up we have our passive tree, and if you're interested in a full in-depth guide on how it works, then check out my beginner guide. So let's take a look at our setup, and we want to start at the spell damage node, and then go like this while taking all of these three, so the raw power, practice science and the critical overload. Then now we keep on going until we get to the sudden escalation. Then from here again we keep going until the top and then take right. And then keep going until we get to the Whispers of the Doom, and then get both these lightning nodes. Then afterwards we keep going while taking pretty much all of these nodes right here, and then our second stop point is at this Eldritch Battery Keystone. And then finally from here we want to get all the way down here while taking these three, so the True Strike, for the Juggler and the Deadly Force. And now from this point and onwards we can circle back and unlock the rest of the nodes in whatever order you prefer. All of these nodes that we got are very useful, but the ones I mentioned have the top priority, as they're the most important ones to acquire early on in the game, to make our build functional, and then later on the priority doesn't really matter that much. And then now let's go all the way to the middle again, and for Ascendancy build this is what we have. So at the beginning you want to unlock the Footprints in the Sand, then second now and again, then next we want the Ultimate Command, and then finally select the Unbound and Core. So feel free to use this exact same path as we have right here, and don't forget to check this video's description to find the link for this website, and this should make it easier for you to follow the path. Next we have our gear. The weapon of our choice is the Siphoning Wand, and for the bonus stats we want to gain damage as extra lightning damage, increase spell damage, more to max mana, more levels to all cold spells, increased mana regen and critical hit chance. Then also we got an offhand called the Expert Plummet Focus with Energy Shield. And for more we want increased spell and lightning damage, max mana, more to intelligence and increased mana regen and critical hit chance to spells. Then also we have the second weapon set, which is very important for our build to fully function. So for the weapon we got the Rattling Scepter with the max mana, reduced attribute requirements and more levels of all minion skills. While for our offhand we got the Crest of the Artura Shield with increased armor and energy shield, more to intelligence, and increased mana regen and cooldown recovery. Then for helmet we have the Expert Feather Tiara with energy shield, and for more we got max energy shield, max mana and more to fire and cold resistance. Then for the chest we have the Expert Kate Raiment with energy shield, and for more we want increased mana regen and flask mana recovery, more to spirit and chaos and lightning resistance. Then for the belt we have the Plate Belt with more to armor, max mana and cold and fire resistance. Then for gloves we got the Expert Sombri gloves with energy shield, and for more we want max energy shield, max mana and more to critical damage bonus. Then for boots we're using the Expert Feather Sandals with energy shield, and for more we need increased movement speed, max energy shield and max mana. Then for our first ring we got the Amethyst ring with the chaos resistance, and for more we want increased lightning damage, max mana, increased cast speed and mana regen. While for the second one we have the Breach ring with increased cold and lightning damage, max mana, increased cast speed and increased mana regen rate. And then finally for amulet we have the Solar Amulet with more to spirit. And for bonus stats we want max mana, more to spirit and increased mana regen. No matter which gear you choose, just at least try to get 75% resistance cap on all 4 elements. This is the best case scenario setup, which should be more of an example of what stats and prefixes to look for. And now finally, let's quickly take a look at how this build will work. So our rotation is quite simple, but you will need to get used to it. So what we want to do is first of all start by using the temporal chains. Then we follow that up with the conductivity. Then next use the time freeze in the combination with the soul offering. Then next we also want to activate the frost wall, and then from here just spam the sparks until the boss dies. But mainly for AoE and weak enemies we basically will turn into a spark build. So just keep spamming sparks and see all of these crazy crits popping off left and right. The only thing you need to keep in mind is the defense. Our build does not have energy shields, so Mind over Matter is a good defensive layer, but should not be heavily relied on in the endgame. While the time freeze has a high cooldown, so feel free to use it 24/7. Then also the second wind for 33% no cooldown. And then the time snap reset will allow you to use the time freeze continuously in the combat. Overall, if you can master these skills, then you will become unkillable with very high DPS output at the same time.